internationally, and it's a tremendous plus to have him join us for our second LiveShiur. I'm sure it'll be very entertaining. You are open for questions too, right?
For sure. Trying to make it interactive.
Vlad was here last week, so you gotta follow that.
Which one? The younger or the older?
Yeah, current chief rabbi of Israel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'll pass it on to him.
No, he's a nice guy. But his father, boy, I wouldn't want to have to follow him. Okay, good afternoon. From Shmuel, we start? Okay, good afternoon.
We're not streaming, but we're taping.
Oh, you're not streaming?
It's okay, it's okay.
But no, someone doesn't want it to happen.
You never, Reb Shmuel, they have no idea what I'm going to say. And I understand this, right? Okay. All right, so listen, it's a pleasure to meet you guys. Frankly, Reb Dylan over there is a very good friend of mine. I thought people all wear Hawaiian shirts here. I mean, this is really strange. It looks great. I figure who knows what the Rosh Hashanah is going to look like coming out here. So, can never tell. So,
I reset it already.
I have one disadvantage. Speaking when I talk to Avram Shlomo, one disadvantage is that I was raised frum. So when I meet kids, I love teaching at Aish HaTorah because I know that 80% of why I'm a religious Jew is because my parents and grandparents made good decisions. And as a result, although I was a big troublemaker, I didn't make enough trouble to destroy myself. So I love teaching at Aish HaTorah and meeting guys like Avram Shlomo, the former Dylan, if I recall, that's right. And so in my 29 years, I think I've learned a lot. And what I'm trying to put together, start with a brief story, and then go from there. I've been at Aish HaTorah for 29 years. Came there in 1985, and after a little while I started learning how to give the discovery seminars, the evidence that God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. And after a little bit of that, I went to Noah Weinberg, very famous man, and said, Rebbe, this is fantastic. This stuff about God gave the Torah, the evidence, I never had that as a frum Jew. Forget about secular Jews, forget about frum Jews. We should be doing this for Orthodox Jews, people like me who never had it. And without batting an eyelash, Reb Noach said, it's too hard to be makar frum Jews. They think they're so religious. Let's start with the easy guys first. Secular, reform. Then when we get further into, we'll make conservative Jews. But when we really get good, then we'll get to, teach Orthodox Jews as a God who gave the Torah. And I didn't know what he meant until recently, when I realized we're living in a world where there's a noticeable amount of dropout from the Orthodox world, from the Torah world. And I think it's really important that everything that the Jewish world has done in outreach was a practice how to make a difference to their own kids. And I'd like to lay out both ideas and methodology, what I think is going on, and we'll try to cut it down to roughly 1 hour with discussion, etc. And I'm going to be picking on you guys anyway. I think I consider an interactive class is the best type there is. Cohen, what's your first name? Avi, what is the value of giving an interactive class? Keeps people interested, right? Max, what else? What is the value of giving interactive classes?
People get to test their own opinions.
Right, to test their own opinions, to kick it in, right? First name?
Ariel.
Ariel, the value of interactive classes? It makes sense, right? Anything else? Anybody else? Reb? No? Well, the greatest value for those of us teaching classes is that they pay us for an hour talk and we only have to work for a half hour. That's major. But, okay. Seriously, I feel that all that's been done in the last few decades for Kiruv is something that we're going to have to understand for ourselves. We're living in a world where we will be challenged as never before in terms of Torah Judaism. Not perhaps in the world of ideas and in the world of practice. And it's going to be tough. But it seems to me that in a way it makes sense. Can anybody translate to me a concept the Chazal give us? I can kick in the Hebrew words. Okay. The Chazal give us Kol man davar rachlam ono latava ovid. Shmuel, what's his name? What's your name?
Tzvi David.
Close. Tzvi David. Can you translate that? Kol man da'ovid rachmana. I shouldn't pick on one guy. Kol man da'ovid rachmana latava ovid. What?
Everything that God does is for a good reason.
It's for the best, right? For good. And therefore, if we look at a world, it's sometimes very tough to answer. You know, Crusades, Holocaust. But can you hear the idea, gentlemen, that when God creates a world that is massively, philosophically attack us, how can we see that as for the good? I'm going to ask you. How is it in a world where there's a massive thing and kids are going to drop off? And maybe a lot of people. And 200 years ago it was the same when reform started and secularism. And people, the whole Jewish world was frum, and by the time you get to now, 90% are not frum, and they're dropping off. I'm sorry, call him first name again? Avi, or Avram. But I'm going to really open it to me. What does it mean in such a world where so many people are going to drop off? What will be the value of everything God does for the best? How can you see that as something positive?
Yaakov?
Yeah. No?
Wait, can you, I don't understand the question.
The question is, in a world where so many people are dropping off because the world is becoming more and more anti-religion, can you somehow see it the good side? What is it that God would want that in a positive way? Why would he want a world that attacks us, philosophically?
To unite us.
You know what? I accept that. But I will say, so there's a basic rule in my classes. This is a good point. There's a basic rule in my classes. Whenever I ask a question for reasons, and there are many possible good ways of understanding it, many possible truthful answers, the correct answer is
The one you want.
the one I'm looking for. So, okay, that's not bad, but it's not the one I'm looking for. What's your first name?
David?
David. Why is it that God would allow a world that massively attacks people drop out of Yiddishkeit? What would be the value?
Well,
what is the positive side, Avram?
Yeah, I was going to say that Hashem chose us as a nation, so it would be more of a test of us to see if we follow His laws.
If we follow it,
I think the stronger the attack is, the more, if you can withstand it, means the more you knew about.
very good. So really, first name again?
David.
David and Avram said, that combination is very, very important. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, if I wanted numbers, I join the Catholics. I want real human beings. The Torah was given to us, and I'm going to look to how I see it. Torah was created to take very high-level animals and give you the ability to create a human being out of yourself. And the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't aim for numbers. He aims for quality. Rebbeinu Shalom, you created a world for people to connect. There are 7 billion people in the world. God, how many of those 7 billion would you want that they should connect to you? What would God say? 7 billion sounds like a liberal. You allow liberals in here?
What is it?
I agree with you. Just kidding. Let me push you around. All of them. The Rebbeinu Shalom would want everybody to make, right? Who did God offer the Torah to? Every nation. Oh, very good. So how many would God want to get connection to God? All of them. Question number 2. Okay, I understand God, but there are 7 billion people in the world, and in a world where it's up to every one of us to make the right decisions, to be the animal or to actually choose to make of ourselves human beings, it's up to us, not to God. So tell me, God, you created a world where there's 7 billion. Some of them will connect to God, some won't. You're God, so you know how many will make it in the end. Tell me, God, what is the minimum number of people actually choosing to use Torah to create real human beings out of themselves? That you, God, say that for that number, it's worth creating the universe. What is the minimum number that God would say, in a world where I want 7 billion humanoids to choose, make the right choices, what's the minimum number that you think God would create the world for?
10.
1.
What?
1.
Great.
Sure.
1.
Why 10?
1. Because what a meanie you are. You're saying if it would only be 9, he would jip those 9 out of being created because if it's not 10, you don't get the chance? God.
It's a million. Yeah.
Hey, that sounds like a round number. First name again?
Ariel.
Ariel, do you hear how mean you are? You're saying that God would say, you see you 9 guys? If it, no. Rabban Shem is an infinite giver. If in the end one would get it, he would create the universe for the one. You hear it?
For everyone? One person?
No, he would create it. If in the end only one would make the right decision and get the connection, he would create a universe.
Oh, I thought you meant if he would create the world, meaning like he would create the world for only one person?
Yes.
Wow.
If in the end of 6,000 years, and there are billions of people in the world, and in the end only one would achieve a connection to God, he would have created the universe, right? And if you say 2, why would he say, what do you mean 2? Means if only one, he wouldn't jip them out. And that's one of the understandings where you say, Bishvili nivra olam, the world was created for me. That if in the end nobody gets the connection but me.
So why not just make only Jews?
He did.
No, I mean like why don't
He
Jews
did.
only live on this planet opposed to like
He did only make Jews. Told them,
what are you talking about?
I would say even better. Because he didn't create the world for Jews. He created the world for human beings.
Right, but if the Jewish people are the only
Who
ones,
are the Jewish people?
we are the Jewish people.
No. The Jewish people are the ones who made the decision, starting with Avraham Avinu,
Right.
to use Torah to connect to God. How many Jews were there at Matan Torah that said, we accept Torah?
I don't remember.
I don't either. It's about 2-3 million people. If every one of them would have stayed Jewish, their kids, how many Jews would there be in the world today?
A few more.
A few hundred million. You know why there are 12 million Jews in the world? Because through history, most of those people said no over the following generation. You have to understand, first of all, the fix is in. From the time of the giving of the Torah, humanity will achieve its goal of X numbers achieving a connection to God for which the universe was created. The question of Yiddishkeit now is, Moshe, are you going to be one of them? The Jewish world does not eat our, God does not eat it, need our work. Moshe, the real question is, will you be one of the guys who make it?
Yes.
And if you do, I hope so. You're on the right track. And if you do, one of the ways you will make it is by making a difference to others. And that's why Hillel says, Imeid ani li mili. First Moshe says, hey, I got to take care of me. Shni la'atzmi mani. And one of the ways I will achieve my connection to God is not only doing it myself, but being a giver, making a difference to others. So what I would like to go through is a brief element of getting a handle on this. We talk a lot at Aish HaTorah. What do we mean by God? What do we mean by Torah? I'm going to put that aside, and I'd like to figure out who we are. That there's something more important. What is the number one principle? Yeah, just a glass of water. Sure.
Do you want some?
Right.
It's all right. No, thanks. What is the number one principle of Judaism? And I want it in one word. Remember, there are many possible truthful answers to this question. Thank you. But there's only one correct answer, meaning the one I'm looking for. In one word, what's the number one principle of Judaism? Michal? No, and because it sounds so unfair that I ask questions like this, I'm going to tell you it's the answer. Most of them will be, when I tell you the answer, you'll say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Remember, I'm not... Max, what's the number one, in one word, the number one principle of Judaism?
Truth.
Truth. Oh, that's good, but not correct. No, I mean, not the one I'm looking for. Avram?
Number one principle.
Oh, and when I tell you, you'll kind of understand. Oh, let me give you a hint. Suppose instead of 15 Jews, you were 15 Gentiles. 15 Gentiles who were very nice people. They'd like to hear more about Judaism. I always say that whenever somebody comes to Aish HaTorah, really, first day, right to get in, no questions, man, this is great. You got to check his yichus. Jews give me a hard time. So it's a picture that there are 15 goyim who would like to know, some of the nicest people. And I say to them, as a going, said, tell me, what do you think, in one word, what's the number one principle of Judaism, more from which every other principle derives? What would your answer be?
Morality?
What?
Morality?
Belief, morality, still thinking like Jews. Moish?
Goodness.
First name, Yaakov?
Yeah.
You're Yaakov, and you're David?
David, yeah.
Hey, you check with him. What's your name?
Johnny.
Johnny. Where are you from?
Seattle.
The Southerners should have a better shot at this, Johnny. What's your name?
Yoni.
Yoni, where are you from?
Richmond, Virginia.
Richmond, Virginia. You should get this. Everybody in Richmond would answer this correct if they were Gentiles. God. The number one principle of Judaism is God. Southern?
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, got it.
All right.
Julia,
David, making sense?
Yeah.
The number one principle is God, the infinite source of all that exists that's finite. First name again?
Yoni.
Yoni. Yoni, what is more important to you than God?
Nothing.
Fanatic. Not true. Reb, what's more important to you than God? Yoni. I'm sorry. Yoni.
Yeah.
Michal.
Yeah.
What is... Think. I want you to think.
Himself.
What?
Himself. I don't understand what's more.
Excellent. Don't complain.
But really, it's
Hey,
God. But
don't complain to me. Complain to him. You're the one that got it right. He's the one that got it wrong. Your first name again?
It's Aria.
What?
It's Aria.
Ariel. Got it right. You hear? The number one principle of Judaism is... David, are we making sense here? And what's more important to you than God? You. Are we making sense? David? Avram, you hear it? Okay. So let's forget about talking about God and talk about what's really important to you. Johnny, am I making sense? Right. You knew there was a God, a you, long before you knew there was a God. And if you ever found out there was a God, your first thing is you were some kind of, oh, darn it, somebody's getting in my way, right? Am I making sense? Yoni, you here?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, then why don't you come up with that answer? All right. So, if the number one principle of Judaism is God, there's something more important, and that's Moshe. Am I making sense to you? There's something more, most important thing to you is you. How do I know? I'll prove it to you. Take Michal over there. Take Michal over there. Michal, wait a minute, does everybody say Michal's a really nice, who is the nicest guy in this room? Okay, this will work. David, you've been voted the nicest guy, at least one of the semifinalists, so the nicest guy in this room. Okay, Dave? Now I want to tell you something about David that you may not have known. Not too long ago, maybe summer when you're back home, David woke up a little late for some job he had. So he runs through a breakfast, he turns on the radio, and he hears that the first news piece on news while you were running through your breakfast was that there was an earthquake in Bangladesh that killed 50,000 people. You're a nice guy. How did that make you feel?
Devastated.
He was devastated. He was devastated. Because you're a really nice guy. 5 minutes later, okay, it's a rush through, you turn off the radio, and as you're rushing out, there was a little piece of furniture with a nail sticking out, and he tore his pants, and he was on the way, it was like a suit pants. He tore his most expensive pair of pants. Oh, I mean, we have to run, okay, so he runs, comes back home, and that evening he comes home and he sees two pieces of information. He sees the newspaper saying 50,000 people died in Bangladesh, and number two, Mom says, oh my gosh, you ruined your suit. Tell me, David, which of those two events of the day bothered you more?
Probably the earthquake. My mom would care more about the pants.
Oh yeah, that's right, she's the one who pays it. What?
He was voted number one. Let's try the number two guy.
What?
Let's try the number two guy.
Well, I don't think he looks too upset about it right now. Let me think about it. In other words, we live in a world where even the nice guy, we haven't got to the Nazis, we've got this nice Jewish kid. We are radically self-absorbed. We are so self-absorbed that we don't even notice it. about how important we are in our world. So, what do we ourselves? Is that a problem that you are rash SOB? Is it something bad for you?
That's natural.
I didn't ask if it's good or bad. I didn't ask if it's natural. In a moment, we'll ask about nature. But is that something bad? No, because let's go back to God for a moment. Can anybody give me the one word that will most define God?
Infinite source of the universe.
Infinite source of the universe. No, Ariel, good. Now we're going to cut it down. I agree with you. And now, Ariel, give me which of those 5 words, infinite source of the universe, which, right, the one that is most definitive, right. So that's excellent, though. What we mean by God is the infinite source. Ariel, what can you do for an infinite being?
Nothing.
Excellent, doing Ariel, great. In other words, as opposed to your rain god, if you have many gods, who in his fight with the wind god and the sun god, you give him what he needs, and he'll give you what you need. In the concept of one infinite being, you can't do. And see, a rain god may be 1,000, 1 billion times more powerful than you, but you can still do something for him. 2 or more gods, each one is fine. But if you have one infinite being, Ariel got it. What can you do for him? Nothing. And therefore, Judaism would say that God created you entirely as an infinitely giving, infinitely loving act, and therefore you were created as the pleasure-seeking being. Everybody knows where we find the rabbi telling us that you were the man who was created for pleasure in the first chapter of Mesilas Yesharim, where the Ramchal says, Lo nivra adam ella lisaneg al shem b'tanug amiti. Man was created for only one purpose, not like number 1, 2, 3. What's the most important? Lo nivra ella. There's only one purpose which you were created to get the maximum pleasure from the infinite source. And therefore, I can't complain that you're an unbelievably self-absorbed blankety blank. You were created by God. You are the pleasure seeker. The essence of you were the being that God created to seek pleasure and find it. And therefore, whether you are Adolf Hitler or Mother Teresa of Calcutta, just to look into the way I would talk to a secular group, the one thing they have in common is the drive for pleasure. There you go, it makes sense here.
We're connected.
Right.
In other words, somewhere along the line, I'm going to have to explain why David, in his feeling bad about 50,000 people dying, is also part of his being a pleasure seeker. Hold off. So step number 1, lo nivra adam el lisaneg el Hashem. Oh, by the way, and what is this chapter? In the second paragraph of that chapter, the Ramchal tells us that man was created for only one purpose, to get the maximum pleasure from the infinite source.
What do you mean, like the first? But why not
What? Go ahead.
just people from here?
What?
I mean, why not just pleasure from anyone else but God?
They're excellent. Hold up, right, okay. You're right in line. Hold in place, very good.
I'm holding it here.
Oh, that's right. And by the way, what is this chapter called? What is the first chapter in Mesilas Yesharim called?
Aish?
Isn't it man's duty in this world?
Chovas Adam B'Olamot, man's duty in this world. And how does he describe it first? To get the maximum pleasure from the infinite source. Did you get it? It's not pleasure is one thing you do. That's the obligation of man in this world. So now, step number 1. What do I know about Moshe? I know that Moshe is a pleasure seeker, that every decision that Moshe makes, every decision Ariel makes, every decision David makes, is based on what will give him pleasure. In fact, you cannot. This is something you cannot choose. It's just like you can choose what you do, but you can't choose who you are. Not yet, by the way. That you're a pleasure seeker, that every decision a person makes, again, Mother Teresa or Adolf Hitler, every decision a person makes is based on their determination, correct or incorrect, of what will get them the most pleasure. And that's the programming you cannot break. Yoni, did you just have a hand up?
Yeah. So what
Yeah.
about like acts of like selflessness or self-sacrifice, where people obviously want something but they let, for instance, someone else have it instead?
And therefore, when a person decides to die for a cause or to give away a piece ice cream, what are they really doing? What? Tzvi David. Are you called by both or what?
Whichever one.
Tzvi? Okay, so
It's fine.
Tzvi. So what is that when I decide to die for a cause or to give away my ice cream?
It's what they wanted to do. So it is their pleasure.
In other words,
indirectly
you
for
call
it.
a person good based on your value system. A person is called good when it gives him more pleasure to die for that cause than to live with the awareness that he sold out. Or it gives people more pleasure to give away the ice cream than to eat that to themselves and to realize, who am I in that context? Johnny?
Is there such thing as altruism?
And therefore, all altruism, you're running a little bit ahead of me, but once you ask the question, all altruism is relative to absolute altruism of God. Now, it's God's giving in a world where He's infinite. And what can you do for an infinite being? Right, nothing. Therefore, all altruism is altruistic relative to absolute altruism. And we're making it, but it deserves much more. We're just talking about coming up with a survey of it. Avram?
Yeah. What makes you say this besides for human experience, which I wouldn't argue that most people, 99% of people do fall into just going after what they want. But how do you know that it's impossible to retreat into pure thought and make a decision based off pure thought?
No, I want you to retreat. I want to be selfish enough for you to do that.
No, what I'm saying, if someone makes a decision based off pure thought, then it doesn't have to be what they want or pleasure seeking. It could just
No,
be pure.
it's not what they want. So we're going to go a little bit step further and look at it. But in each case, pure thought is the ideal way, certainly in terms of Rambam, the ideal way to get the most pleasure.
Yeah, but then that's not pure thought. If that's what you might get pure pleasure.
So hold on, hold on.
To get pure pleasure is not pure thought.
Avram, so let me go into the next step, and we'll see. I think we're gonna pull it together, and then you go back with me. Ariel.
I was gonna say, back on, I think his point
Sorry.
about like giving. Let's say I give one time this happened to me. Like I was at the Kotel, walking out. I went in there with like 30 shkolim. I came out probably less than 10 shkolim because of people asking for tzedakah and tzedakah. Now the first couple of times, yeah, I would give them and I'll feel good about it. So it's my own personal selfish, whatever. Blah, blah. So the point is, after like the fifth guy saying like, give me tzedakah, I don't want to give it to him because like I've just given like 3 other people. Like how is that from my own,
In other words,
benefit?
can you picture that some people would have said no at that point?
I mean, I can't sit up
1
and feel
minute,
bad.
Ariel. Can you picture some people would have said no?
Yeah.
And can you picture that the guy who said no is not necessarily less of a good Jew than you? That's right. Because you were able to be cowed into such a situation that it gave you more pleasure to give it than to embarrass yourself. And they would say they had enough self-confidence to not have that problem.
It wasn't pleasurable. I didn't
Very
want to
good.
give
So
him money.
So Ariel, now we're saying broaden out your understanding. You're watching, let's go, how old are you again?
20.
20. Let's go back to you're 10 years old. Where you come from?
New York, but Richmond, Virginia.
No, that's good. So 10 years old and you're at a friend's house watching TV.
Okay.
Right? And his mom comes into the house and and your mom says to your friend Joey, Joey, can you help me? Says to her son, Joey, can you help me take out the garbage? And Joey says, oh, Mom, you always bother me when I'm here with my friends watching TV. You are horrified. And you, 10-year-old Ariel, said, oh, I'll help you, Mrs. Goldberg. Can you picture you doing that?
Yeah.
Of course you can picture that.
Well, it depends.
I know. Whether you're
Yeah,
Joey or...
which I'll do.
Oh, well, let's go look at it a little differently. You're at your house watching TV, and your mom comes...
I don't
and
have
says,
to do that.
well, whatever. Focus attention. You come along, you're in your house and your mom says, can you help me take out the garbage? Can't you picture it's more likely things, ah, Mom, and Joey says, oh, Mrs.
I don't know. I
What's
would
your
do
last
it.
name? Whatever. Right. In other words, you have an unbelievably superficial view of yourself, in which you are not aware, which we will hopefully to get to today, you are not aware of the inner contradictions in your life that are being forced, you were forced to be making decisions about. You really think you're a you and you're not. And so what I'm saying is, in each case, you have an inner conflict in which you make the decision, and it could be the wrong one, of course it could be the wrong one. But the issue of, what do I want most now? Do I want to do something intelligent, or do I want them to think I'm a good person? Sometimes you'll give tzedakah for that purpose. Sometimes you'll violate halacha for that purpose. Everybody's different. And we're going to have to figure out who you really are and how you can really choose to be a you instead of being manipulated by the world around you.
Right, but I couldn't say no because I felt bad.
Hey.
You know, like, well, I don't understand, like...
That's very nice. See, another guy, but that does tell you you're kind of a nice kid, because another guy would pull out his gun, blast his face off with his shotgun, and say, and therefore, what?
It's too far.
I know, but you're still better than him, right?
Yeah.
But you may not be as self-controlled as the guy who says, no, I don't have any more, and that's it. Again, what I'm saying is, everyone is, ever since Adam ate from the wrong tree, we're going to look at, jumping a little ahead, you are the result of continuous areas of inner conflict, and until you understand what they are, you will be subject to a world of attack, a world of assimilation, I'm going to try to quickly get to the point of understanding 3 different points of who you are.
But just one more question. What would you do in that scenario?
What would I do in the scenario of the money?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to tell you, I'll tell you a different story. Listen carefully. See the story, okay, Ariel?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Why, you're Litvak? You let Litvaks here? Or you Sephardi? Sephardi, that's practically like Chassidim, so focus on that. Ariel, listen.
He's not Sephardi.
You're American, God help us. I understand. Focus attention, Ariel. So there's once a Rebbe was in an inn with his Chassidim, and he told the Chassidim, in those days the inns were generally run by Jews, because when they have a kosher inn, so then Jews and Goyim can all, so it was a heavily Jewish industry. He says to his Chassidim, sitting around the table, and he says, see that Jew, call him over. He comes over and says, the Rebbe said, suppose you were to find a wallet with a lot of money in it, and the name of the guy who lost it, would you keep the money or would you give it back? Chassid said, oh, of course I'd give it back. Torah says give it back, just my own partial. Give back the money. Oh, okay, he sends him away. And the Rebbe says to his Chassidim, the man's a fool. See, call that one over. Calls him over. You find a wallet with a lot of money in it, and the name of the guy who lost it, would you keep it or give it back? Says, well, I suppose if I find such a wallet, it must be, I'm a poor man, so God must want me to keep the money. So probably that's really what God meant, so I'd keep the money. Oh, okay, he sent him away. And after he left, he told his Chassidim, the man's a Rosha. He's a wicked man. Tough choices, right? Call that guy over. Call the third guy over. The Rebbe says, you find a wallet with a lot of money in it, and the name of the guy who lost it, would you keep it or give it back? He says, how should I know what I'm going to do? Now I don't have the money, so of course I would want to give it back, but that's because I don't have it in my hands. Once it happens, who knows what I'll do? I guess you're asking me what I do. I pray to God that when the time comes, I do the right thing. The Rebbe said, oh, that's a smart man. Hear the answer?
Yeah.
That's understand yourself. Try to figure out when you are not being tested, who you want to be and how you become that person. So step number 1, Ariel, you're a pleasure seeker. Everything you do in life is based on your view of what will give you more pleasure. What's the next step, gentlemen? Max, you hear your pleasure seeker? You were created by God to get the most pleasure out of life. What is the next step? What do you need most to determine what you need most to get pleasure in life? What do you need?
Money.
money is only for the guy who doesn't have money, which is why they have a higher suicide rate. See, if you don't have money, you say, well, I'm kind of miserable, but maybe wait, if one day I'll get rich. So I'm not going to kill myself now, maybe I'll one day have money. The guys who have money say, no, that doesn't work, then they jump, right? So, hey, what is the most important thing you need?
Wait, if you're Jewish? Or a normal man?
I think what we mean by Jew, let's hold this off. What we mean by a Jew is the human being who has the ideal set of information called Torah to get the maximum pleasure out of life. Can a goy get a chelik in olam haba?
Yeah.
What are the two ways he can get it?
I have no idea.
Yes, you
Yeah,
do.
but I know you can.
Yes, you do. What are the two ways he can get a chelik olam haba?
Saving a Jewish life.
To keep Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach, or when I tell you, you say, of course. What? Very good. To convert to Judaism or keep the Sheva Mitzvot, right? So when we say Jew, what we're really the guy who has the info. Oh, can a Jew lose his portion in the world to come? Yes, a Jew can. Right. So therefore, let's figure out what works and what doesn't work instead of Jew and non-Jew, because we believe that a goy can have a portion in the world to come, and a Jew can lose it. So let's figure out how to do it best as opposed to Jew or non-Jew.
Right.
All right. So step number one, we have you are a pleasure seeker. Understand yourself. Every decision you have ever made is based on your drive to get the maximum pleasure out of life. And what I'm asking now is, what is step number two? What do I need most? What do you need most so that the decisions you make will result in pleasure, and without which you're least likely to get it?
Guidance.
What? Guidance. Okay, so remember my old rule. That's true, but not correct, because it's not what I'm looking for. Guidance, excellent. Yaakov. Once I tell you, you're going to say, yeah, that makes sense. Johnny? I mean, very few do get it right on here. Max?
I'm going to go with truth again.
What?
I'm going to go with truth again.
Truth. This time you got it right. In other words, because remember before God, truth, okay. You want, we haven't got to God yet. First, we got to talk about Ariel. He's a pleasure seeker is number one. Step number two is to get pleasure, you got to know what's emes. The more you have what is emes in any area, the more likely your decisions will result in pleasure. The more you don't know what's emes, the more likely that the drive for pleasure you have will crash and burn after too long, after a bit of time. To put it bluntly, have you ever heard of AIDS? Yoni, you familiar with AIDS is?
Well, sorry.
Gentle AIDS. You heard of AIDS? Do you know how you get AIDS? I'll explain it to you. It's people who want pleasure while not taking into account emes. They want pleasure, but they don't take into account the reality of the situation. In English we would say a statement is true when it's a statement in accordance with reality. Now we got two very important things in. We got to understand the conflict and the connection. Max, you want pleasure. To get it, you got to find out what's emes. And by the way, this is why within humanity there's an essential understanding within all of humanity. The search for truth within every civilization is the deep understanding that the more we know what's true, the more likely your decisions will result in emes. It's easiest to see in science and medicine. The more you know what is true, the more likely the decisions will result in pleasure. The more you don't know what is true, the more likely you're going to screw up trying to get pleasure but not get it. Step number one, I want pleasure. Step number two, to get it, I have to find out what's emes. Why is it that a person says, I have a good friend and I'm trying to get him to stop smoking? His friend says, I thought you liked me. I love you. You're a wonderful friend of mine. Well then, don't you know that smoking gives me pleasure? Why do you want me to stop smoking? Max, how do you explain it?
It's not real pleasure.
It's because it'll only give you pleasure short term. The emes tells us that in the long term you'll have a much more non-pleasure than pleasure. you got to take into account what's emes. And that ultimately, if you want step number one, pleasure, you got to find out what's emes. Avram.
How do you define pleasure?
Pleasure is that which pleases you more than the alternative in any case. That's the beautiful logic of the word. That which pleases you as opposed to the alternative.
But then you're running into like the that I guess you're hoping that Hugh Hefner hasn't had more pleasure than any Jew. Maybe
I don't care. I wish him all the luck in the world.
What I'm saying, but that would.
Because you see, I really do care about me first.
No, I
And
understand.
not only Hugh Hefner,
But maybe try to follow his.
Avram, what's your last name?
Cohen.
Avram Cohen. First, Ime Nanili Mili. First, before I deal with anybody in my circle, first I gotta deal with myself.
Right.
But you have to know that if you want pleasure, you better find out what's emes.
No, I'm saying, but he got a lot of pleasure and he didn't find out what's honest. If anything, he chased not truth his whole life.
No.
So according to your paradigm, we should follow him. Figure out what he did and try to match that.
In other words, ignore pleasure.
No.
Ignore emes.
Well, it depends. If you can do non-M, it's good enough. Then.
Very good. Let's follow this through. You're getting very close to the point. Avram, do you want pleasure?
I guess so. I guess so.
Do you want emes?
I guess in this scenario.
Do you want emes?
It coincides with my pleasure, then maybe. In this scenario.
Max, do you want pleasure?
Yeah, probably.
Do you want emes?
I like to think so.
David, do you want pleasure?
Yes.
Do you want emes?
Not always.
That's, so far, all three work. Whenever I ask, do you want pleasure? Yes. Do you want emes? Yes. Not nearly as quick. Very good. The various different ways of seeing it. In other words, in a world where to get pleasure, you can know intellectually that the more you know what's emes, the more likely you're going to get it. That AIDS is the world of pleasure without emes. And that includes Mr. Hefner. It's just that if he's not lucky enough to get AIDS, he's even not lucky enough to do tshuva. But it works for him too. You see, everybody wants pleasure, but not everybody wants emes. Or, to put it differently, Avram, you're more sure you want pleasure than you are that you want emes. Now, what is the problem? What is the problem where pleasure is what you want much more than emes? Yoni?
Because if you have MS, then you realize that the pleasure you had previously wasn't really pleasure.
I'm not sure. I mean, eating a piece of cake is kosher and you make a bracha, there's nothing bad about it.
That's what we're talking about. Talking about, let's say, okay, a little weird example. Let's say the Hefner example.
Yeah.
The guy, he thinks that he's having pleasure, but if he had MS, then he would realize that that's not real pleasure. Like you said, he doesn't.
So let's
have,
hold
like
it
the
first.
The AIDS example, he doesn't have MS, or the smoking example, he doesn't have MS, so therefore he thinks what he's doing is all pleasure.
So let's get the handle on it. Everybody wants pleasure, not everybody wants emes. Take the 7 billion people on earth and let's divide them into two groups, uneven probably. Group number 1 says, I want pleasure, and to get it I want emes. Group number 2 says, I want pleasure and the heck with emes. What is the difference between group 1 and 2? Is it the difference between one is Jews and the other one are Goyim?
No.
No?
Yeah.
You mean you have Jews on both sides?
No, because you can have.
You have Jews on both sides?
Maybe, yeah.
Right, correct. And Goyim on both sides?
Yeah.
So that we don't have Jews and Goyim, right? That's right. How about men and women? Men on one side, women on the other?
Mixed on both sides.
Right, makes sense. So what is it when we take the 7 billion people on earth and say group A is the one that says, I want pleasure, and to get it, I want emes. Group number 2 says, I want pleasure and the heck with emes. What is the essential division within humanity? What do you say, Michael? How old are you, Michael?
18.
At what age did you become a gadol, according to halacha? What age?
Like that, or 12.
What?
What do you mean by love? What do you mean la?
What age halacha? When we're going to allow you to daven for the Yom? What?
Our mitzvahs at 13.
Bar mitzvah.
We became a mitzvah 13.
Bar mitzvah.
Bar mitzvah.
So at 13, did you become an adult?
No.
Oi, how about 14?
I haven't become an adult yet.
Oh, he doesn't know how much you're telling the truth. Tzvi, how old are you?
18.
Are you a child or an adult? Michal says he's a child. Are you a child or an adult?
I'm a child.
I think he's wrong, but he's closer to the truth. Max, how old are you?
19.
19. Are you a child or an adult? No, you're working very. I'm not I think you're working out very well. Just think about what you guys are saying. It's good. Max, are you a child or an adult?
Child. Majority.
How a majority?
Most of the year's child. He's an adult.
Oh. I just hit 65. Am I a child or an adult?
It's up to you.
That's true, but I'm asking your opinion.
Opinion? I don't know. I can't see you.
What?
I don't know you well.
Without knowing me well, am I a child or an adult?
Say adult. Oh.
Avram?
Are you asking philosophically or legally?
Not legally.
Alright, so I don't know. Why did you use adult and child as your two words?
Good. Analyze. How old are you?
18.
18 years ago, Avram came into this world as a child. A child is someone who wants pleasure and has no concept of the importance of truth. Your parents say, no, I don't want you to stick those bobby pins with those funny little holes in the wall. It'll kill you. I'm not, that well as it looks like it's a lot of fun. No, eating that stuff is not good for you. Wah, wah. You came into this world as a child. In the terms of pleasure and truth, a child is someone who says, I want pleasure and the heck with truth. God himself did not hold you accountable because you wanted pleasure and did not understand the value of truth. But at 13, you became... At 13, he became...
Responsible.
I don't understand what you mean.
At 13, you became...
Responsible.
At 13, you became... Bar mitzvah. At 13, you became bar mitzvah, and you know what that is, Avram? God activated an adult within you. A capacity to understand the value of emes. But Avram, the child, who had been there in control for 13 years, says, oh, no, it's my territory. And at 13, you became both a child and an adult. Why then did Max say, I'm 19 and I'm more of a child? Because he understands the system. 19 years ago, he became a child. 6 years ago, he became an adult. But when he became an adult, the child refused to leave. So you had 13 years free and clear child where God himself did not hold you accountable to find out what's emes. But at 13, you became both child and adult. At 19, you were a 19-year-old child that says, I want pleasure and the heck with truth. But a 6-year-old adult that says, could I find out what's true? Get it, Max? Max, I'm 65. I have been a child for 65 years. Find out what's pleasure and the hell with truth. But I have been an adult for 52 years. We got to come on, for 52 years you knew you got to find out what's emes. Which is why the Chazal says that even at 13, from 13 to 20, you have a 7-year process of growing, and only at age 20, God holds you accountable totally, because you have so much of the child taking charge of you. Once you understand, you have good, healthy selfishness, which you don't yet get. We're going to explain in a moment, because being an American, we have a economy that wants you to be a child for the rest of your life. But, good luck, gentlemen. But to understand, in a world where to get pleasure, you got to find out what's true, Tzvi. Step number 1 is to understand. Are you a child or an adult?
Hopefully an adult.
Yeah, but what are you really? You're both, but much more of a child than an adult, because you started out that way. You started out as your natural self is the child. If it feels good, do it. You have to work on overriding it to be an adult. Because that first impression of you is, if it feels good, do it. In a world where you want pleasure, and to get it you have to find what's true, you are a natural loser until you override. Avram, what's your favorite sports team?
I guess New York teams. New York teams.
You give me your favorite team.
Yankees.
The Yankees. Favorite team, huh? Would you rather they win a game when you're watching, or would you rather they lose?
Win.
You'd rather they win. Well, I can tell you right now that losing is much easier. Losing is easier. Winning is what counts. You know how easy it is to lose? It's simple. Losing is easier. Winning is what counts. You ever climb a mountain? Ever go mountain climbing?
Hopefully in a week we'll be.
Okay, mountain climbing. Well, I can tell you right now, when you're in the middle of mountain climbing, you're real tired, it's much easier to let go. Falling off a mountain is much easier for you than, all right, much easier to do than climbing. It's just not as good for you. In a world where if you want pleasure, you got to find out what's true. Step number one, there are 3 steps to look at. Step number 1, you have to understand. How old are you?
17.
He's 17. Are you a child or an adult?
Mixed.
You're both. But you're a 17-year-old child and only a 4-year-old adult. Using that information, you can override the natural tendency of you being a child for the rest of your life, even if you are American. But it'll be harder.
Gotta wait till 27.
And what happens at 27?
14 years adult. 13
And
years
how?
child.
No, you missed it. I'm wrong. At 27, he's 14 years an adult, but 27 years a child. Didn't stop at 13. Do you get the idea? No, you hear it. Avram, you're getting just about all of it. It's good for you to bring it up. Avram, asking Akasha is always good because you're clarifying what the area, you got most of it in place when you said that. Do you hear the idea? At 27, at 26, you become less than 2 to 1.
Wait, so the older you are, the more of a child you are?
No.
Understand?
At
I shouldn't balance out.
at 27, he's a 27-year-old adult and a 27-year-old child and a 14-year-old adult.
Well,
It's less lopsided than you are now.
Oh.
Now you're 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1 child. At 27, it's less than 2 to 1. Which raises Rabbi Avram's very good point. At which point do you become a total adult?
When you're dead?
What?
When you're dead?
Excellent, you got it. You get it, Avril?
No, I don't get it. I just.
Sure you do. Just think. And by the way, I do want you to know that in a world where everybody knows they're going to die one day, you can either live in such a way to understand it and have simcha in your life, or try to avoid it. And any psychologist will say, try to avoid it, you'll do desperate things to avoid yourself, and you're still never going to be that stupid to think that you won't die one day. A culture that tries to deny it, nobody is stupid enough. All he's doing is repressing. If you don't deal with reality, you will never be happy. Which is why you have a very depressed society who's desperately trying to avoid reality. And you can't, because nobody's that stupid. But Ariel's point, in other words, not when you're dead, by the way, when you die. When you die, at that point, the child falls off total. You enter into the world of,
Ganeda or whatever, Machlokas.
what is it called? The world of, you enter into the world of,
You can't bring your wife.
you enter into Olam Emes, the world of truth. Remember, you have the truth now too. When you die, you leave beyond the Olam HaSheker, you enter into the world of truth. When a person enters into that world, at the moment of the separation of body and soul, he enters into the world of truth. Will he find that situation pleasant or unpleasant?
Depends who he is.
Very good. It depends on not who he is. what
Who he
he
was.
did. But what you do determines who you are. So you really got that too, just to understand. To the extent he lived based on what is true, it'll be a very pleasant place. To the extent based on what was not true, it'll be a very unpleasant place. It depends what he chose to be. But he came in a world where even in this world he can know that the long-term self-interest, you can be a goy, you can be an atheist to know that the long-term self-interest says, if you want, before you get pleasure, you better find out what's in it. Again, we're not yet talking about Judaism, we're talking about any goy can know it. By the way, which can give you an understanding, Ariel, when God tells you to get married and have kids, he's not telling you merely to populate the world. God is telling you, think about your own parents so you understand. God is telling you that in a world where you're such unbelievable babies, the most important thing you need is to get married and have kids. Because, Avram, you're going to have children? Mitzvah Hashem. Are you going to love them? Are you going to love them?
I really hope so.
Okay. Then to begin to understand that in a world where you have kids, that is the number one act that will force you to be an adult. Because you can be an unbelievable child, but there's nothing like have a child that you care about that will force you to be an adult. And teach you that. Well, if it's for my kid, then why wouldn't I do it for me? Remember, you don't do anything for God. God doesn't need you to populate the world. The Chinese do it better than us anyway. What you need, every mitzvah, is to get you in touch with reality. And the one way to do it in a world that you're so lazy is take care of your kids. Yeah, wrong.
So, well, can't you just make the argument that anything he would do for his kids is still him as a child because it's really for his own good because he doesn't want to live with the fact that he has kids who are
Sure.
messed
As
up?
long as he's dealing with the kid, where you have your Yetzer Hara and your kids has theirs, and in you're dealing with your Yetzer Hara, you're much more stuck. And therefore, have somebody deal, and that's also why it's important to have good friends, Avram. That when you have friends, you care about them and you don't have their Yetzer Hara. Much more likely to see what to do than when you are solely taught, so totally subject to the part that says, hey, ignore what's true here. When you have friends, and who do you love more than in terms of friends than your children, you're much more likely to be real. Because you can understand the value of truth and you don't have their Yetzer Hara.
Why are we assuming all of a sudden he's able to make good decisions?
Because you care about them.
But not more than you care about yourself.
Oh, no, of course, but you, there are two of you there. You're more likely to be a child when it comes to you. You're more likely to be adult when it comes to your kid.
Yeah, but what they do can influence you. Therefore, your child will override what.
No, again, but not the kid. No, you have the ability of being an adult when they have a child, and you care about it.
No, I understand that, but if you had a scenario where your interest conflict with your child's interests, you're gonna, as we established, you're gonna pick your interest.
No, it's not your interest. The kid has to go to the doctor and get an operation. Kid, I don't want to get kind of needles and stuff.
Yeah.
You drag him to the doctor, and they give him a shot, and your kid says, hey, my father must hate me. Look, sticks needles in me and everything. You love your kid. There is no way of explaining to the kid what you just did, and the kid thinks, my father hates me. You do it anyway because you love him. That's the point, Avram. Well, you listen carefully, and you'll hear the Rabbanu Shalom laughing and saying, okay, Avram, now you understand my problem with you.
Yeah, that choice, I'm saying seeing what is better for him is still a child choice.
No. Think. Why are you going to do that for him?
Because you want to feel better about yourself.
No, because you want to take care of him.
So all of a sudden he's an adult.
What? Right.
So you're saying all of a sudden the parent is an adult.
No. You were always both over age 13. It's just much easier to be the adult when there's somebody you care about without your Yetzer Hara. That having a kid is, I want to take care of the kid, and I don't have his Yetzer Hara of escaping that pain and being a child. Boy, much easier to figure out to do the right thing. At that point, do the right thing for the kid and don't take him into account. I'll try to explain it, but we're going to do the right thing. Number one, therefore, in a world where you want pleasure And to get it, you got to find out what's emes. Step number 1, to understand, Tzvi, how old are you?
18.
Child or adult? Both. Step number 2, Tzvi, are you an animal or a human being?
I'm a human. Sorry, I'm a human being.
Gee, I'm so close to getting it right. Yoni, are you an animal or a human being?
Both.
You are both. And this works much better in secular terms, so my thanks to Charles Darwin. Imagine that you're a nice secular kid at Aish HaTorah. How long have you been an animal? Oh, well, I've been an animal for millions of years, genetic years of my genetic memory. I'll accept that. You've been an animal for millions of years. How long have you been a human being? Well, we know. Torah tells you that you've been a human being for 5,775 almost. Hey, guess what? You are both an animal and a human being, but you're much more of an animal. Do you eat food, Avram? Yeah. You drink water? Go to sleep, go to the bathroom, yeah, like any animal. Do you make a bracha before eating?
Yeah.
As consistently as eating or not as consistent? Well, what's your favorite food? Good steak?
Yeah.
Oh. So which do you do with more kavanah? Will be for eating a steak, the bracha or the eating?
The eating.
All right, because we're all more animal than we are human being. But that's
How does
okay.
that make us animals? Why can't that just make us humans?
Hey, very good. A human being is the animal that has the theoretical capacity to choose to be more. You are human. Just understand that a human being is the animal, the natural animal that has the theoretical capacity through free will to choose to override. But the natural you, as a human being, is the animal. The unthinking you, just like it's easier to lose the game than to win, the unthinking you is the animal. You have to override it to be the being that connects to God. And don't be surprised, therefore, that you look at a world where, when ignoring reality, well, that would be great. Yeah. My animal is so much more natural. What are the 2 primary drives of a healthy male mammal? We're looking at, not as a human being, animal. Lion, tiger, bear.
Food. And
What is the 2 basic drives of the healthy male mammal?
Food and relations.
Survival.
Survival isn't the drive. Survival is doing the result of doing it well. What are the 2 drives?
Food and relations.
Food and sex are the 2 basic drives of a healthy male mammal.
Food's not a drive. I mean, it is a drive, but you can replace that drive with just supplementing your diet with nutrition.
No, your drive for food.
Drive to survive.
No. The drive for food. The animal is not interested in survival. As an animal, he wants to eat. He doesn't have the concept of survival. He didn't go to college, kid. The animal says, I need 2 basic drives is finding food and finding sex. We have to quickly jump to the 3rd in order to come back. Ariel, are you an individual or are you part of a group?
Both.
Excellent. And therefore, both as an animal and a human being, you are also both an individual and part of a group. And therefore, it makes sense that take the animal you, the drive for food is how you keep yourself alive as an individual, and your drive for sex is how do you keep yourself alive as a species. Obviously, God, or in the secular word, nature, gives you 2 basic appetites. Because if you didn't have an appetite for food and sex, you'd drop dead personally, and the species would collapse. And therefore, in order to maintain the animal kingdom, you need 2 basic appetites, food and sex. We can begin to understand why Torah, in Shulchan Aruch, in Yoreh Deah, the 2 biggest areas of halacha are how to regulate your food to be a human being, and how to regulate your sex to be a human being. Because the animals don't need a Yoreh Deah. They don't need a Shulchan Aruch. They have a natural drive for food and sex. You're the being that has a capacity to override the animal to be a true human being. And therefore what you need is a Torah that gives the information. What are the ranges of food and what are the ranges of sex that maintain you as a human being versus the one that will continue as an animal. But the natural you is the animal.
So what's the human side of the human?
The created being, the Big Bang, you and the Big Bang are essentially the same. The Big Bang and you are a combination of atoms and molecules. The human being is the being that can make free will choices to tap into the infinite.
Why can't it just be the spiritual side of it?
What?
Why can't the human side be the animal side and the spiritual side be of the human?
Yeah, you can call it spiritual. You just better get a handle on what it really is. That there is a conflict going on between the animal you and the human you. The animal you, like the child, it's the natural you. It's the one that you do without any instruction. The human you, which you could have had you not eaten from the wrong tree in Gan Eden, but because you did that and kicked yourself 3/4 of the way back into the animal kingdom, I'm going to now, you can see it in the story. First story in terms of the Eitz Hadas Torah. But by eating from that and getting kicked 3/4 of the way, you are much more naturally part of the animal kingdom. So the Rebbe Shalom says, because you wiped out the hard drive in terms of internal awareness, I'm going to give you the external information called Torah that'll tell you how to create of yourself a human being.
Yeah.
But the animal is the natural you. In a world where even the goy knows that if you want pleasure, you had better find out what's true. So that understand those 3 basic steps. Step number 1, in a world where you want pleasure and to get it, you got to find out what's true. You are both a child and an adult, but you're much more of a child. You have to override that for the rest of your life. Number 2, you are much more of an animal than a human being. The natural you is the animal. The eating, the sensory pleasures are natural to you. You have to override that to create the being that connects to the infinite. Number 3, that other one, crucially important. Are you an individual or part of a group? Avron?
Both.
Which are you more of?
As an individual, I'm an individual as part of the group and part of the group.
Right. So which are you more of? An individual, being more of an individual, more part of a group?
I'm more of an individual.
That's the common mistake that all kids will make that'll destroy them. That really thinking that because that tiny little amount of individuality is that you're an individual. But in fact, you're 99% plus the result of your group and less than 1% individual. The 3 basic things that make, that determine who you are. The times which what year were you born?
96.
Not 96, you were born in 1996. Because had you been born in 1896, or 896, or 1996 BCE, you'd be a totally different person because you are so little you and so much the year you were born. Or suppose you were born in 1996. Where were you born?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. No, you're not born in New Jersey. You were born in Pakistan or Tokyo. Or, you really want to see something weird, Mea She'arim. You'd be a totally different person. Or if you're born in 1996 in New Jersey, what's your last name?
Cohen.
But not to the Cohn family, but to the Khan family of Pakistan who recently arrived. You know, the Aga Khan family. Or the Hayakawa family. Or the Hernandez family. Yeah, probably down the block. What city in New Jersey you from?
Rockaway.
Yeah, they got plenty of Mexicans there. You'd be a totally... Any one of those 3 would make a totally different you. Because you are 99% plus. Ariel, gets in the way of your ear. Hearing. No, it's all right. It just blocks the ear. You can't hear as much. Because Ariel, I like it. I mean, you're good. Good. I have no objection. Really.
No, that's fine. Over that.
Okay. Avram. And to think, the worst thing is to, because if you know that you are massively the result of that, you can override and say, what did they teach me that's true, and what did they, because remember, to get pleasure, you got to find out what's true. But if you're going to think that you are really individual because of that 1/4% of the choices you made, like do you like Cheerios or Trix? I mean, they're going to get a hold of you totally. Because in fact, we happen to be living in a world where there is a multi-trillion-dollar economy that has a major interest in you not being an individual at all. It used to be that there was more respect for individual. Now, with a multi-trillion-dollar economy that says, I'm going to determine what you wear, and I'm going to determine what you think makes you look sharp. That's also because you're part of the animal kingdom, and therefore you want to be attractive as an animal. But you have this combination. You are much more of a child than an adult, much more of an animal than a human being, and an economy that knows it and says, and I'm going to take advantage of that in you continually. And what Judaism says, go back to the first two steps. I want pleasure. To get it, I better find out what's true. Chazal says, get married young, leave it up to your Rosh Hashiva, and understand that the #1 method of you caring about being an adult is having children that depend on your adult decisions. Nothing will turn you into an adult as much as having kids, or talmidim, because we know a talmid is similar to a kid. Nothing like caring about kids that'll force you to be an adult. And to always remember that you're a duality. You are never you. You are the clash of your child versus adult. You are the clash of your animal versus human being, the clash of your individual, in which you are massively the result of that group. That's the Jewish concept of the separation, saying, in a world where I'm affected by the world, I better choose what world I'm affected by. And even then, you may find that it's more important for me to put on my black hat on Shabbos than to not talk during davening, because we are so massively affected by the group around us that it determines things for us so much more than anything else.
Rabbi Ginsburg.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Now, we can't go into a lot of ordeal. I want to just pull it together and for you to then go to your question. Tzvi!
Yes.
Are you a child or an adult?
Both.
Are you an animal or a human being?
Both.
Are you an individual or part of a group?
Both.
By now, after my hour and a quarter, I want better answers. But it's not a one word.
Part of each.
Once you know you're both, then if you, in the concept of what Bechira Chavshis means, if you know you're both, then Tzvi, the answer at that point is whichever one I choose to be. But it's constantly up for grabs. Once you know that you're both animal and human being, but you're more of an animal, then the real answer is whichever one I choose to be. And once you know that you're both an individual or a group, it's whichever one you choose to be. But understand that it's no longer so surprising that from Matan Torah till now, 95% of the people who could have been Jews are now Goyim. Because the Rebbeinu Shem gave a Torah to create real human beings. And a real human being is one who chooses that they are the adult, that they are the human being, that they are the individual who makes the choices. Once you know, see, if you really think that you're the adult, so all you're going to do is project yourself into, okay, now I gotta, what do I do to maintain the illusion? You have to know that freedom of choice does not mean that you choose what to do. Freedom of choice means you choose. Finish my sentence. Free will does not mean I choose what to do. 100 times a day I choose to eat this and I won't eat treif and I'll put on tefillin. Freedom of choice goes massively beyond choosing what to do. You're choosing
Right.
true but not correct. You're choosing
What to be, truth.
what?
What to be.
I can't hear you.
What to be?
You're choosing who you are. What to be. Who you are is massively the result. You know, what you eat. You are what you do. But not really, I'm choosing to do this or that. I'm choosing to create a me. Free will means in the end of the game, at the end of your 120 years of Rome, who will determine who you are, God or you?
Me?
Absolutely. Do you hear it?
Not so much.
In the end of your 120 years, who will determine who you are, God or you?
Well, if every choice you make is pleasure seeking, so really it's just based off your circumstances and what created.
Again, no, you didn't just play, you missed the beginning point. All a Jew has to do is to make the choice that is give him the most pleasure, but for that he has to know what's true. And any time you have a choice, when a person says, do you want a pork chop, which will give you 25 pleasure points, or do you choose to say no, which will give you an infinite number, you don't need an accountant for that, do you?
So that's not a choice either.
Of course it is.
How's
And
that a
that-
choice? If
Well, have you ever made a choice to do the wrong thing according to Torah?
Yeah, but that's because.
Well,
I
then
have more pleasure.
obviously you can do it.
That's only
Congratulations.
because I have more pleasure.
Hey, no, that's only because you choose to be who you are,
But why
the
would-
animal or the human being.
Why would I choose one or the other?
Very good, but it's no longer a question because you do. So you may want to ask for the mechanism, but we already know you can do stupid things. You can trade the infinite for $1.50.
Not willingly.
No, of course willingly. You choose to do it. Take responsibility for your life. That's going the way you're saying it now. Don't go back to being a child. Take responsibility for your decision.
When we started out, every decision you make is for your own pleasure.
Right. And that's all God said. I want you to always make decisions that will get you the most pleasure.
So
And in a world where he
said
tells
it's
you,
impossible not to.
Avram, you're not thinking. I don't want you to start just making excuses for yourself. That's
no,
the
we're talking about
Avram, that's
somebody else.
that's the natural child. Now,
We're not talking about myself. We're
Avram.
talking about a person.
no, you're not. You can only talk about you, and you're talking about it well.
We said a statement about.
Avram, to understand that God created you and said, I want you to always make the more pleasurable decision as long as you take into account, as you know anyway now. Just take into account what is true and then always make the better decision for you.
Didn't we state that people can't make decisions unless it's for their most pleasure?
No. You can no. You always make the decision for pleasure. You decide whether it's the greater or the lesser. The child is the one who says, will I make the greater? You're not thinking, you're just talking. And you'll never get anywhere if you just talk instead of think.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. That it's not
But that goes right now as well.
Right.
And therefore, every decision you make is the decision to say, do I get the maximum pleasure later, or do I get whatever I want now that's lesser? That is all the decisions that we make the decision. Once you know, you were here for pleasure, and to get it, you got to find out what's true. You make the decision. Do I want it now, or do I want it later? And I got good news for you. And that is whichever one you get, you will get. Anyone who says, I'd rather have a pork chop now than a connection to the infinite later, gets a pork chop now instead of an infinite later. We call that reward and punishment, but that's very unfair to God. You always get what you choose. Anybody who says, I'd rather have a pork chop now rather than a connection to God, gets a pork chop. You think there was ever a Jew who, as he's about to eat the pork chop, God said poof and it disappeared? No. You always get what you want. You know what you call getting what you want? Reward and punishment. You always get what you choose. Now, because God knows you're such a child, so sometimes he gets your attention in this world. But the Chazal tell us, Schar mitzvah b'hai amaleka. When God tells you in the Torah a reward and punishment in this world, that's not schar nonesh. That's just God treating you like a child. Okay, you want to be a child? All right, I'll help you. Your dad says you're not brushing your teeth. Okay, I'll give you a lecture on oral hygiene. Right? Is that what your father will do it when you're 10 years old and you're not brushing your teeth?
Yeah.
He's not that dumb. He knows it ain't gonna work. He says, you don't brush your teeth, no dessert for a week. Whoa, that's what goes on in Torah. Torah tells you if you do the right thing, you get these little prizes. If you do the wrong thing, you get these little patches. And the Chazal tells schar mitzvah, that is not schar mitzvah. That's just God treating you like a child. There is only one schar for a mitzvah. What is it? Getting the infinite. There's only one onish. What is it? Not getting it. But because you're such a bunch of babies, God says, all right, I'll treat you the same way your dad did when you were 7 years old. But you can grow up. Most people don't make it, but you can grow up. A grown up is someone who says that if I can get more later, I say no. By the way, this is a human definition as well. Even nations, the civilization is one that knows that long-term goals are achieved through short-term sacrifice. Once you know a civilization that you may call adult, called the United States, where they do everything for now and the heck with what's later, you know it's just a matter before they crash, and whoever has enough ability, they may be Muslims, they may be Chinese, but whoever has the ability for long-term thinking will be taking over from them. And by the way, it's a continuous process. Every civilization that gets to the point that no matter what, we are too strong to disappear, does the things that cause them to disappear. Every civilization. When they get to the point that we cannot fail, we're too big to fail, then they make the decisions to fail. And those who are capable of thinking long term take over. But to understand, your decision to get pleasure is a given. You can choose now or later, long term, short term, true or false. Free will is, in fact, in a drive where you want to get pleasure, you have the ability to destroy yourself. The more you are part of a civilization that does it, I would call those Americans now, the more likely it's going to, why do you think people are dropping off? The more the goy around us can't do it, the more the Jews who are so-called frum drop out as well. Come on, we are not just Jews. I mentioned Ariel. I am both a Jew and a goy. I am both a Jew and an anti-Semite. I'm not interested in you not seeing it. Denial is the natural thing. One day you'll grow up. You are both a Jew.
No, but how can you say
Ariel.
a guy and a Jew?
Ariel. Ariel.
Or a Nazi. I mean, like,
All right. You are both a goy and a Nazi.
I don't understand that.
Well, that's all right. Is it too much for me to demand that you should think a little about it? Well, as an American, it's not possible. I tell you, as a Jew, it's possible. Do you have a Yetzer Hara?
Everyone has a Yetzer Hara.
Do you have a Yetzer Hara?
Yeah.
What is its goal?
To destroy me.
Excellent, excellent. To destroy you. So can you please tell us here, what is something that you did recently, something that your Yetzer Hara recently told you to do? I don't know. You don't have to say whether you did it or not. You can clean it up for the audience. Tell me something that your Yetzer Hara recently told you to do.
You really want to know?
No, we don't want to know already.
I mean, I don't. It's not. I mean, maybe don't get up for chakras, maybe. But
Okay.
It was a summer before I came around.
Ariel, your Yetzer Hara told you to not get up for chakras, right? I'm not asking whether it won or not. But your Yetzer Hara once told you to not get up for chakras?
Definitely, I won.
1 minute, but I want to hear Ariel, Avram and you, two favorite kids in here tonight. Now, it's good. You guys are doing a good job. I don't want you hear, Ariel.
Yeah.
Please take my word for it. Now listen carefully, Ariel. I want to hear, since we think with words, I want to hear the words that your Yetzer Hara said to you when it got you to not get up. You woke up. It actually woke up. What did your Yetzer Hara say?
I'll tell you, it definitely didn't say kill myself because I'm not a Nazi. It
No.
says go to sleep because you're really tired.
What here?
It
Listen,
doesn't,
gentlemen. What did he say?
keep on sleeping because you're really tired, and it was true.
And you went back to sleep, right?
Of course.
So I want to tell you two things. First of all, he never said that.
It was me who said that.
Ariel, He didn't say, go to sleep, you're really tired. He said, I'm going to sleep, I'm really tired. Because you are both a Nazi and a Jew. In other words, Ariel the Nazi said, because he never said you. Listen, you told me that your Yetzer Hara is out to kill you, and when he said, I'm too tired to get up, you thought it was you. And when you decided to stay in, you were. He never says you, he always says I. Now when I say, I'm Ariel, you'd say, no, you're not Ariel, you're Rabbi Berger. But when your Nazi says, you see, by the way, if you ask Holocaust survivors from Europe, they will tell you they don't call the Nazis Nazis. What do they call them? Germans. Nazi means like these 5 terrible goyim who are in the terrible. No, they're Germans. The Germans spent 200 years from the middle 1700s to convince you that he's your best friend, just like your Yetzer Hara does. Come on, you're too tired. You know his goal is to totally destroy you. But what he's saying is, now who is more concerned for your health and welfare than me? You're tired. It'll be terrible for you to get up. Bottom line is, Germans spent 200 years to say to the Jews, why on earth do you need God to protect yourself? We are the most wonderful people on earth. Get rid of your God and we'll all have a wonderful friendship. And only after the Jews said, take off, God, we got enough friends of our own, did they drag you off to Auschwitz because your protection was gone. And your Nazi is no different. The number one goal of your Nazi is to convince you, first of all, it's really you, and number 2, who is more concerned for your pleasure and welfare than me? And that's why it never says, you're too tired. It always says, I'm too tired. And until you can realize that there is an Ariel that is an animal and Ariel that is a human being, Ariel that is the Jew and Ariel that's the Nazi, you're gonna more likely listen to him. To understand what's really going on. Avram, how old are you again?
18.
18. You want to get married one day?
Yeah.
Married Hashem, yeah. All right. So let's picture. You're a couple of years from now, get engaged, right? By then we're good friends. You let me know you're married. Avram, well, Mazel Tov, who's the lucky girl? And then I ask you the following question. Tell me, Avram, why do you want to marry that girl? For her good or for your good?
My good.
Your good.
Yeah.
Excellent. In other words, nobody gets married because they love the girl. They get married because they love themselves. Do we got it?
Sort of. I mean, like,
Absolute.
you're marrying someone because you like it. But then why are you marrying the girl then?
You're marrying her because A, you love yourself, and B, because she pleases the one you truly love.
But you chose that specific girl because you love her.
No, if I like you
Because
told
she
me you
makes
loves
fun
it,
of herself
you
the
love.
most.
Avram said he loves a good steak. Then why does he cut it up, chew it into little bits, digest it, and flush the remnants down the toilet? I love steak. Avram loves himself. Destroying that steak pleases the one he truly loves. And then he says, I love steak. It's the same thing with girlfriends. I love myself. Destroying that girl pleases the one I truly love. Noah. Ariel, would I say it to you if I didn't think you would? I love the way you talk. Don't worry. It's fine. Avram, Ariel, and you also know some people think up more so when you're speaking for everybody. It's good. Ariel, really, it's good. No, don't complain. Understand. Think about it. I know. I trust your mind more than you do. Good. Just think about it. Avram.
Yeah.
Nobody marries the girl they love. After all, Avram, if you really loved the girl, would you marry her? Of course not. If you really loved her, you'd find some really great guy for her. Shmuel, nobody marries the girl. Avram, one day you can have many children, boys and girls, and it comes your daughter's of marriageable age, and you're very careful to find a chassan for your daughter. Very careful. Not like some of your friends, right? You want to be so careful because you love your daughter. But nobody ever loves their wife as much as they love their daughter because they allow their wives to marry them. You got to be married to get it. Okay, Avram. That's why you have a mitzvah of Shana Rishona. You have a year of tshuva to make up to her for getting her to marry you. But we'll hold that off. You don't marry her. It's not that the rabbis tell you, Ariel, that you shouldn't love her until you marry her. It's that you don't. The evidence is that you married her.
So what,
Maybe I love her because she makes me
And
feel
therefore, what?
Maybe I love her because she makes me feel the best.
I didn't say, of course that. That's the same way somebody hires a prostitute,
Right,
right?
that's why.
And you're like, she's my favorite prostitute, it makes me feel the best. And I don't pay for any garbage, you know what I mean? Hey, focus attention. Focus. The point is, a minute. The point is, you don't marry a girl because you love her. The point is because you love yourself. Now the question is, Avram, have you ever been at a wedding?
Yeah.
Well, now you know what a wedding is. Two selfish people trying to take care of themselves. And hopefully they're not this way created by a fake society saying that you marry her if you love her. Because we'll maybe look in a moment as to what they did to fool yourself into thinking. Guy gets married because he loves himself. Girl gets married because he loves... Now the question is, step number one, Ariel says, is that girl good for me? Now once Ariel figures out that that girl's good for him, and he's a good yeshiva bover, so he wants her to marry him, what's his second step? His second stage is acting real nice. Right? Make sure you freshen up for the dates and things. He uses a knife and fork when you're out with her, not like the way you usually eat, because while it is in her interest to find out all she can about Ariel, it's in Ariel's job to find out she doesn't find out too much, right? Because you're there for yourself. And then, knowing that you're faking the whole thing to make her think you're a nice guy, you actually trust her and say, wow, she's such a wonderful girl, not realizing that she's 3 times the actress that you are the actor.
I guess.
Yeah.
I've never been on a date before.
At any rate, that's why, in Jewish terms, you got to do less dating and more research. Research. By the time you meet the girl, and the 99% animal that says, I want her, your human being is going to follow, drag behind, saying, oh, yes, she's a wonderful girl. I hear she went to school, this, that. But, hey, you had better do your research before your animal loses total control. First, find out what she's really, what maximum what you, and then you go out. Right?
Right.
Okay. You marry this girl because step number 1, you think she's going to be good for you. Step number 2, you try to make life great for her. Why? Why do you want life to make good life for her? Because you know that the happier she is with you,
She's gonna. I don't know.
the happier she is with you,
The more she'll make you happy.
the better it'll be for you. And therefore, you start being a nice guy because you know that if she's happy with you, you will be better off. So you put yourself aside, we call that long-term thinking.
So basically lying to her wife for the rest of her life.
Not the rest of your life. Boy, this guy is so bleak on it. Listen carefully, Ariel.
So once you're married, you can just do whatever you want. I mean,
Listen, Ariel. Childish short-term thinking there. Let's get back. Step number 1, Ariel says, that girl's going to be good for me. Step number 2, I will see to it that life is great for her. I will put, not just in my dating, but after I get married, I will put energy into her happiness, knowing that the happier she is, the better off I will be. We call that Yiras Shamayim. Yiras Shamayim is doing a mitzvah because know that the happier God is with me, the better off I will be. But the Rebbeinu Shalom tells you that ahava, the word love, is from the word hav, to give. And therefore, although you're giving because if she should be happy so that you're happy, but to the extent you give, you will love that person. And therefore, while you start giving because it's good for you, the giving that you do lo lishma, the rabbi tells, becomes lishma. And slowly you get to the point, I'm not giving just because she'll be happy and then it's good for me. Although frankly, in your engagement, it is totally that, and life is wonderful. But the more you give, because if she's happy, it's good for you, the more you will love her, because the one you give to is the one you love. Ariel, are you going to love your children?
Yes.
How do you know? You've never met them.
Because the greatest thing for a father is to lose a son or a child. Meaning, like, no, that's the worst thing. Sorry, the worst thing. The worst.
It's okay, I saw it in the back.
Ariel, stop getting religious on me, and I want you to think. Guys, tolerate mistakes. He meant what? Well, he meant the other thing. No, leave it alone. Ariel, I like you. You're doing good. Ariel, but stop being religious on me. How do you know that you will love your children? You know people that only a father could love, but the father does. How do you know you will love your children?
I don't.
Yes, you do. How do you know you love your children, Avram?
They gave birth to them.
Even if they're adopted.
I don't know about that.
It's not the same love. It's not the same. It wouldn't be the same love.
And the answer is, David?
No, I was going to ask, how is that different than the wallet case? You don't know.
Focus attention first on getting the answer, then we'll ask questions.
Okay.
How do you know you will love your children? No wonder people don't want to get married anymore, because they have no idea of how things work. Let me tell you, Ariel. You know you will love your children because your children, as they're born, will come into this world with the greatest gift God could give them, and that is the ability to do nothing. And therefore, when your child comes into this world with the ability to do nothing, so you will have no choice but to give, you will have no choice but to love. Because the more you give to somebody, the more you will love them. That's the reality.
Absolutely.
God creates a world that is, in the world of Bechira, it is unbelievably extreme in taking away your Bechira Chofshis. That the more you give to someone, the more you will love. And therefore, you can know it because even an unbelievably warped person will have almost no Bechira on having that ahava. So what is higher? What's greater? The love of your children or the love of your wife?
Both.
What is greater?
Children.
No. The love of your children will be automatically more there. And therefore, what is automatic is not as meaningful as what you choose. And therefore, the love of your wife, which always started as radical selfishness, if you get to that, people generally love their kids more. But if you get to the point of loving your wife, which is what the higher level of love, it's much more meaningful. Because with your child, God gave you a bunch of freebies. A kid who can do nothing, you have no choice but to give. With your wife, you can be a child, you can be an animal, you can be totally selfish. And therefore, to override that, to really get to the point of caring for her, is harder. But it's much more deeply real love. But to understand that, now remember, and therefore when I tell you that you are 90% Goy, 10% Jew, and that's being a yeshiva bocher, is because you are so stuck with the illusions of the Goyim around you. And I'm not talking about Israelis, I'm talking about Americans, because there is no Israel really. I mean, we're talking, this is America, right? So let's be real. You are living in a world where you are massively the result of who's around you.
Right.
What's the number one source from which you learn about life? Avron? I want a one-word answer. What's the number one source, one-word answer, from which you learn about life? How to socialize, how to judge people. What is the number one source from which you learn how to deal with people?
Experience.
What experiences?
Mine.
People.
People, very good. People, the number one source from which you learn how to judge people and live, in other words, if you were born in 1942 in Germany, likely to be a Nazi. The number one source from which you learn how to deal with people is people.
Mr. I'm just a little.
What?
I'm just a little, just a little.
I can't hear. Ariel, what?
No, nothing.
Hungry.
I'm just thinking, I'm just processing everything.
Wants that short
No, it's excellent. Listen carefully. 1 minute. Finish off on this. The problem that you have, gentlemen, is that in the 6,000 years of human civilization, you are only the third generation, the second or third generation, where the vast majority of the people that you have met don't really exist. In other words, 50, 100 years ago and 1,000 years ago, you met people. And actually, I read recently, the average 20-year-old has met between 200 and 500 people. What does meeting? Means there are 200 to 500 people who you've heard speaking for an hour or more, in which you get a feel from them about what their concept of life is all about. And so the average person used to be that at age, how old are you?
20.
Okay, about 20, you've met 200 to 500 people that have massively determined your view of what humanity is. There's only one problem. You are no longer part of civilization. You live in a world. Do you have a TV at home?
Nope. I have a computer with internet.
Oh, right. Yoni?
Yeah.
Did you have a TV at home?
Yeah.
Listen carefully, and we'll explain that if you have a friend like Yoni, you're just the same trouble. Yoni lives in a world, how old are you?
19.
Where Yoni has met 200 to 500 real people to find out about life, and 50,000 to 100,000 fake people. Fake people who he has watched in order to enjoy their story. Yoni, are you your intellect or are you your emotion? When it takes more than 5 seconds, what's the answer? Both. Yoni, you are both your intellect and your emotion. But when you watch a TV show, you can't watch it with your intellect. Because if you watch it with your intellect, you say, they said I love you, but they don't really. And that blood is not blood, and they're not really dying, they're all pretending. So the only way you can enjoy a TV show or a movie is by saying, Hineni muchon u'mezuman, to totally remove my intellect. And to only feel emotion without intellect, or I'll never enjoy this show. And therefore, you have met 50,000 to 100,000 people who you've let into your mind, in which they determine what is right and what's wrong, what's happy and what is sad. So for the first time in history, the average 19-year-old has 200 to 500 people he's met that are real, 50,000 to 100,000 actors who fake it, and that's what determines your mind's ability to say, well, what's so terrible about gay marriage? Hey, guys, you live in a world where what the people you've met, Nazis, determines right or wrong. But you've met 50,000 to 100,000 people who you've let in, and they determine the world that is normal. The world that doesn't exist is normal to you. And if you're wondering what it does to you, I know what it does to the actors. Do actors want a nice life where they have loving relationships? Yes. Why do they have a 99.8% divorce rate? Because once you're part of that world, they can't make real relationships. And so to you. You say you're wearing your yarmulke and your black hat and you're going out with this girl, not realizing that 95% of your view of what a normal person is the people you've met that don't exist. Good luck. It's for you that the movie The Matrix was made. The fact that most people don't really exist. They're born and die. There's nothing more than how they respond to the non-existent people who determine right and wrong. But if you're wondering how, in modern psychology, the impossibility that within 40 years ago, being gay was a warped crime, and now you're terrible if you don't think the gay marriage is okay. No human civilization can change in 40 years to that extreme. You need hundreds of years of a society to accept. You need a world that no longer exists because they're living in a matrix in which I can tell them what people think. Even though I've invented those people, you really think, and at that point, it doesn't matter that Yoni is the result of that non-existent human being, but even Ariel is, because all of Ariel's friends have the TV anyway, and he picks up from Yoni what is real and what is not. Obviously, I'm not talking about necessarily Yeshiva guys, but do you hear the idea?
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when you look at what Gedolim say about movies and internet, and then you look at what modern psychologists will say about it, the psychologists are probably more extreme on what it does to create a whole different human being. Because Odom Nimshach Achar Svivosav, every human being is affected by the world in which he lives. And when you live in an essentially fake world, that's what's going to determine who you are. I once had an experience. I was sitting in a shawarma place. It was 15 years ago. Sitting in a shawarma place, I was sitting here eating, and as close as Shmuel is to me were three yeshiva guys, three Mir guys. You know, not only polo shirts, we're talking white and black, right? They were sitting there, and they were facing me, but they weren't looking at me because they had a newspaper open. And while they were eating their shawarmas, they were looking at the Jerusalem Post. It was open to them, and checking how their teams were done. And they were all groaning because they were New Yorkers and the Yankees were knocked out of the playoffs. So they're sitting there, the newspaper's open, and they're groaning about the fact that the New York Yankees, you know what the New York Yankees, what's the difference between the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox? Anybody know? New York Yankees are a bunch of Puerto Ricans bought by Jews from New York, and the Boston Red Sox are a bunch of Puerto Ricans bought by Jews from Boston. Okay, Yankees, Red Sox, 18, right in that side. Okay, we got it? All right, so nothing to do with the New York and Boston play, but hey, illusions, ain't illusions great. They're sitting where Shmuel is and groaning and not groaning, but that the Yankees were knocked out of the playoffs. I was sitting here watching, looking at the front page. The newspaper was open. So I read the headline. The headline said that 3 Israeli soldiers were killed in southern Lebanon yesterday. And I remember thinking at the time, these are not Nazis, these kids. Well, not entirely. They are yeshiva boys from the Mir. And I wondered to myself, which news article bothered them more? That 3 Jews were killed in Lebanon, or that the Yankees were knocked out of the playoffs? To begin to understand, we're in big trouble. Do you hear the problem, Ariel?
Yeah, it should bother them just as much.
I think...
No, seriously. I mean, they have no relationship to the soldiers, and they have no relationship to the Yankees. It's true that soldiers should bother them more, but I mean, you have to put yourself in that situation.
And what I'm saying, Ariel, is I can accept to somehow slowly achieve normalcy by first feeling just as bad. Gewaldig. I mean, Ariel, I'm telling you a Chassidish story illustrates what he said better. One of the Chernobyl Rebbes was not well, so his doctor, his Goyish doctor, ordered from bankis. You know bankis is they would take cups and they would make, the guy had to strip down to the waist, the Rebbe would lean over, and they'd put these hot cups on and would pull it, but the cups had to be so hot it would make blisters. Okay, so the Rebbe didn't know Russian, so the Russian doctor speaks to the shamas, and the Rebbe's gabbai, and the guy tells her, strips on the waist, okay, he puts him over, and then the doctor takes ropes to try to tie the Rebbe's arms on a railing. And the Rebbe said, no tying, I'll just hold on. So the doctor said to the guy, no, tell him that I have to make sure he doesn't move or I'll have to do it all over. I'm a human being, I'm not a behemoth, I'll take responsibility to hold on. And the doctor said, look, okay, but if you don't, you're going to have to do it over. Okay? So, Rebbe's holding, and he does one cup after the other, he sees blisters bubbling on the skin. Rebbe just holding on. And in the middle, the doctor says to the Gabbai, I can't imagine how he can do so, put up with this pain without jumping off of the... Yesterday I had a 6'4" Cossack who said he could do it, and halfway through he just jumped out my window here, a whole thing, to run away with his clothes rather than go through the pain. I can't imagine how he could do it. So the Rebbe turns to the Gabbai and says, what did the Goy say? Didn't know Russian. His Gabbai told him what the doctor said. And the Rebbe said, I'm a Rebbe. Every day people come and say their wives are dying, they can do nothing, their kids dying. Their kids are being thrown into prison because they can't do the... I don't jump out of the window for that. For this, I'm going to jump out of the window. Yeah, that's a good start. Here we say, but I want you to get to the point where what happens to those fake New Yorkers bothers you less than what happens to real people. And you all know that if it get to your real people, you would not care anymore about fake New Yorkers. But how close does it have to get for you to really care about real stuff? You have an idea? The concept is to be real, to feel pain when it is pain, and to not feel it when nothing's really going on. When a multi-trillion-dollar economy cannot get you to care when something falls, like Detroit won, New York lost, because to be real about real stuff means you're not real about fake stuff. But to understand that until the concept of al tamin ba'atzmacha yom moscha, don't trust you till the day you die, Ariel, is that even the biggest tzaddik is stuck in a world of illusion. But the number one way of achieving health is by being aware that we're wrong. To not make yourself comfortable in a world that's sick. Am I making sense, Ariel?
Yeah.
Okay. And what it means is I want to draw from you a good healthy selfishness. I want to get you to be selfish enough to care about yourself. Imena nili mili. You know what your problem is? Not that you're selfish. You're not selfish enough. You're allowing a world around you to determine how you feel about things, and then you know they're manipulating you for their own good. I'm saying, Hillel says, be selfish. Take care of yourself and don't allow you to feel things that they want you to feel when you know it's not good for you. Making sense? What do you say, Avram? You hear it?
I hear it. I disagree.
Okay, so think about it. Because remember the good news. You can only screw up yourself. Shmuel, you look a little...
You could screw up your children. I mean, they're single, but you
Very
could screw up
good.
your children,
Very
you
good.
could screw up your family. It's not just yourself.
But that is them, though. They are both individuals and part of a
Right.
group. You know, the Jewish people may make it. No, the Jewish people will absolutely make it. It just, first of all, where they're part of it, depends on them growing up and being real about what's going on. And then it depends on being selfish enough to say, who is the ultimate selfish guy in Judaism? Who is the guy who didn't care what anybody else said? More than any other great Jew.
Allah today?
No, since the beginning of time.
Moshe Rabbeinu.
Moshe, I want a better candidate.
Adam or Rishon.
He wasn't Jew.
Moshe Rabbi.
What?
Who
Which Jew was the most radically selfish person? Moshe Rabbeinu had all of Klal Yisrael backing, rooting for him.
Selfish and negative thing?
No. Is it what? Avram. Nobody in the world. Everybody said he's wrong. Said, hey, they're wrong. Yeah, but they think you're nuts. What do I care? I'm going to go screw up my life because they think I'm wrong. No.
His Achnasus
Or Noah.
was selfish though?
Noah had his 3 kids with him.
Avram and Sarah.
Terach was against him also.
Sarah.
Oh, Sarah? Yeah, but that was him. To understand that the problem doesn't start with the world. It starts with you. And you have to be more selfish. It says first you got to start with yourself. And try to figure out who you are. And the idea of figuring out who you are, Yaakov, are you a child or an adult?
No.
I want a better answer. What was the better answer?
More a child.
Oh.
What I want to be? You are what you become.
Whatever one I choose to be. Are you an animal or a human being, Tzvi?
Whatever I choose to be.
Are you an individual or part of the world around you?
Whatever I choose to be.
Congratulations. Well, try to see to it that when you get to Hillel's second statement, Uchshani la'atzmi mo'ani, and when I'm for myself, what am I? Is in a world where I want to be the best Tzvi I could be, the only way I can do it is by making a difference to others. But when you understand that by making a difference to others, you make the greatest you there is, you will never burn out. You ever hear people that sometimes they do stuff and they burn out? You know why they burn out? Because they think that they're doing for others instead of themselves. When you know that what you're doing for your wife, for your kids, for your talmidim, is making the best you could possibly be, you're not going to burn out. You ever hear people say, I've been a cook for 30 years, breakfast, lunch, supper, in the restaurant over here. I can't stand 30,000 meals. I can't cook anymore. How old are you?
18.
18. When you're 30, you will have eaten 30,000 meals in your lifetime. At age 30, you're going to say, I'm sick and tired, I can't eat anymore. No, you're going to say, what's for supper? Because when you know you're doing it for yourself, you don't get burned out. Don't be too much of a tzaddik. See to it that what you do for others you understand is the best thing you could do to make a you. You'll never burn up. Questions? Statements?
Yeah, one question.
Yeah. And Johnny, you had one too to
No, it.
go through?
Just going back to the point you said about you loving your children and that you will love them. Well, how is that different than the wallet case? How do you know you're gonna love your children if you don't have it yet in your hand?
Very good. Because the wallet you never love. All you do is love you, and the question is, do I keep the wallet because I have a short-term view of myself, or do I give it away? Because in a world where I love myself, I know the best thing I can do for myself is trade away $10,000 in gold coins for the infinite. You can get your accountant, otherwise called your mashgiach, to let you know. But in all cases, it's how much do you love yourself? If you're a child, 10,000 is more than the infinite. If you're an adult, the infinite, child says a shiny dime is much better than a rotten old $100 bill. The question is, are you going to be a child about it or don't? In a world where you want pleasure, will you go based on what you know to be true, or do you sit there and shoot up the heroin because I feel better now? And I eat the candy because I feel better now. And you do the stuff and end up with AIDS later. Children or adult. That's your child. Choice. And I'm asking you to be selfish as an adult. In a world that 50 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, the Goyish world promoted your ability to be an adult. They had a certain adult, they had honor for you being grown up, making decisions. It's all collapsed. I personally think it's the fault of the economy. That when multi-trillion-dollar economy discovered that we can make more money by treating people like children, and of course then the politicians said, well, I don't need voters, I need money. With money I'll get voters. So they all tell you that I'm here to work for you, but we all know they're both working for the rich guy that they need $1 billion each to run for president. So they'll pretend to you, but they'll really mean it to the rich guy. So forget about the politicians, they don't make it without money. Now your question is, will you be manipulated by a multi-trillion-dollar economy that says work for me, or will you work for yourself? More and more Jews will be dropping out in the next few decades. It's a tragedy on one level, but on the other level, it's God saying, I don't want you to be a Jew because the Goyim are decent. I don't want you to be a Jew because the Goyim around you tell you how to be decent. 2,000 years ago, your Goyish friend would say, hey Dave, let's go to the Coliseum and watch people kill each other for fun. And what would you say?
Let's go.
If you're secular, you say, let's go. If you're more modern, traditional, you'd say, I'll get some goy to buy the ticket for me. And if you're a yeshiva bacher 2,000 years ago, say, damn it, I can't go, I'm frum. You know why you would never think of it now? Because you got nice goyim around you. God says, I don't want Jews to be Jews because goyim are nice. I'm going to let them collapse, and I want, you're familiar with the story about Gidon, who had to have a war, and he ended up with 30,000 people. God says, too many, 10,000, 20. He ended up with 300 that never bowed down to Baal. God's looking for quality. So as you're approaching Moshiach, God is saying, I don't want a bunch of Jews who are good Jews because the goyim are so nice. I'm going to let them collapse, and you're going to be a Jew if you choose to be a you. You make a choice of who you are or not. Are we making sense there, Dave?
Yeah.
Seems to make a lot of sense that God, I want real Jews. Now, it's not an either or, it's not an extreme. 200 years ago, it was much harder to be a Jew technically. If you couldn't keep kosher, 200, 300, 500, 10, 1,000 years ago, you couldn't keep kosher unless, you couldn't buy kosher by among the goyim. Who knows what's kosher? You had to do it all yourself. And if you didn't work on Shabbos, your family went hungry because it was a subsistence economy. It was a tough world technically to be a Jew, but easy psychologically, because even the goy said, if you're not going to be a Christian, you better be a Jew. God says, let me reverse it. I'm going to make a world where it's very easy technically to be a Jew. You can go anywhere in America and you'll go into a thing. They don't even know what a Jew is, and you'll find all the hefsherim that you can eat plenty of food. You never starve anywhere. And I'm going to give you a group of goyim who will defend your right to live anywhere you want. I'll give you a bunch of goyim who say, not only can you keep Shabbos in this country, but we'll give you a Sunday so you can still do your lawn and the housework. I will make it technically easier than it ever was before to be a Torah Jew, but I'll make it harder psychologically. I'm I'm going to make a world where the world has no respect for your believing in God and Torah. And God is saying, the Jew will be the one who makes the tough decision. I'll cut you some slack. I'll give you a world where they don't burn you at the stake anymore. But you're going to have to overcome the psychological block saying, can I be who I want to be? And who will be the Jews at the end is the ones who make the choices. And I don't want you to be anything but a good, healthy, selfish SOB that says, I'm too important to turn myself into a rag doll so that the goy should pat me on the back and say, hey, you're okay. That's going to be your decision. Make sense, Dave?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll break for supper.